We're back for episode 38 in our Front Field Week. A variety of topics this week. If you haven't heard about Netflix's, I guess one of their biggest sporting live events this week, we're going to talk a little about that. BlueSky has also been trending quite a lot this week with six-figure subscriber numbers. So we'll talk about Blues. A lot of people might not have heard of it. And then U.S. funding, TSMC, billions of dollars in funding as part of Biden's CHIPS Act. So we'll touch a little bit on that because NVIDIA earnings are coming up in a couple of weeks. So, of course, we got to talk about chips in preparation for that. But anyways, several topics around the tech space this week.
Yeah, and you tuned in last week when we talked about election results as well as the stock market. The stock market continued rallying a bit until the end of last week, where it decided to take a breather, started to pull back, and people just needed to take a break from making so much money.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't stop crypto, though. So if you're in
Didn't stop
crypto, you
crypto.
just switch markets and then continue making money.
Yeah, crypto has been on a tear. Bitcoin is currently sitting at around $90,000, which continues to make all-time highs in this last month.
Yeah.
I'm fully in belief that it's going to hit $100,000 before the end of this year, which is about another month and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when Bitcoin was $18,000 like a year or two ago. Crazy.
Yep. I remember when I sold a large stack of Ethereum for $30.
Yep.
And it was when I was mining my own Ethereum. You can imagine how I'm crying like the guy who bought pizza for whoever many thousands of Bitcoin.
Was that all your Ethereum? Do you still have any from mining left over?
No, I sold most of it. I mean, back then, right? You're like, wow, $30. So,
yeah.
I mean, of course, I bought back into it, but I nowhere near the amount I had when it's just printing, right? This is mining in the background.
Yep. Mine is my similar story. I never mined crypto, but I did buy Bitcoin for, I think it was around $200. And then I sold it for $560, I think like maybe a few months later, or maybe a year later.
Yeah.
I still have that transaction on my Coinbase account. And so I always look at it from time to time and be like, oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of tears every time I look back. Such is life.
All right, well, you want to kick us off with the first story, big event over the week?
So the big event, so I believe everybody's calling it one of Netflix's biggest live sports events, which was the fight between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. Anyways, much anticipated, much promoted for many, many months, that has been postponed, and it finally happened this week. And yeah, so up almost, there are a couple of numbers I've seen, 60 to 65 million concurrent users watching the stream. And of course, streaming buffering. So quite a bit of people were having issues. So a lot of things were going around social media, on X/Twitter, and TikTok, about all the issues. So it wasn't a flawless execution by Netflix. And then I think, not the controversy, but because Netflix I believe is picking up some NFL football games, people were a little bit concerned that, is Netflix prepared? Are they ready enough? Because they couldn't handle this. But anyways, I just thought it was a cool mention because 65 million concurrent streams. That's nothing insignificant.
It's not. It's a lot of people, and I think it does set the precedence for their entry into live sports, and specifically the NFL. We know that Amazon Prime Video is doing pretty well because they own Thursday Night Football. And so they exclusively stream Thursday Night Football, which brings in millions and millions of people. And for the most part, they're able to provide like a better and different experience. If you've ever watched football on Amazon Prime, you can do things like, what's it called, X-ray view, and they show stats and other things. So I think Netflix is in a similar situation to where, because they are a tech company, they can actually change the viewing experience. And so I think Netflix is going to pop Monday because of this. I think everyone knows that, there were issues, but they're Netflix. They're going to fix those issues. And so I think it was a good test to test and learn, as we
Yep.
like to say.
Yep.
And then they'll figure them out and fix them for future live streams of sports.
Yeah. I'm really curious about how they justify like the monetization of it. Because, okay, so you only had to be a subscriber to Netflix in order to be able to watch it. But if you think back in the days when, like, with these type of events, like on HBO as an example, right? You'd have to pay an
Yeah,
extra,
pay-per-view.
whatever, $50, right, to watch it. But Netflix doesn't do that. And so, it's like, what is the incrementality, right? How many people who want to watch boxing or want to watch Paul Tyson didn't already have a Netflix subscription?
Yeah, how many
And so
how
that's
many
kind
did
of
they
what I'm
bring in?
curious. Yeah, because that's what I'm curious. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but it's just something I was like, I wonder how they actually
Yeah,
justify it, right? Because like Amazon, I can kind of see it because you might go, oh, I'm going to go shop for some barbecue stuff while watching the game. I don't know, but anyways,
yeah. I think, well, we probably won't even find out until next news report, right?
yeah,
And so that's the thing. I do think it's in the cards, meaning pay-per-view. Netflix never had an ad tier before, and then they recently had to roll out an ad tier as a way to continue growth.
yeah,
I think you'll have events like this for user acquisition, but then you'll also have pay-per-view events in the future. So
yeah,
it's all part of Netflix, trying to get to
yeah,
domination. If you think
yeah,
about YouTube and YouTube TV, like YouTube is a monster, right? Like
yeah,
they're so good. And part of
yeah,
that is because they have live streaming and they have a lot of sports.
yeah,
And so Netflix is just trying to get in
yeah,
here, get into the action, continue
yeah.
competing with YouTube.
Yeah, because Prime does it, right? You can
Mhm.
subscribe. I actually just noticed, like, you can actually subscribe to Apple TV through Prime, which
Yeah. It's like a hub, trying to be the hub.
yeah,
But yeah, I watched the event. I wasn't particularly interested in,
it was disappointing to be
it,
frank.
it was boring for sure.
Yeah, because it was definitely, yeah,
And everyone knows that the biggest thing that you were talking about is how Mike Tyson held back clearly and how his
yeah,
training videos didn't match his actual boxing.
right, right, night and day. Man, it was
So
like, yeah,
it was all hype and they got their payday, which is what I expected of a fight like this.
yeah,
Similar to like the Floyd Mayweather fight a few
yeah,
years ago, where it was just a payday.
yeah. But I mean, good for Tyson. I mean, he's what, 58 years old, right? And I, I'm not 58 yet, but definitely he's way better shape than I am. So
Yeah.
no, good for him.
So yeah, just wrapping that up. The Netflix's CTO did tweet something related to the streaming issues. He said this unprecedented scale created many technical challenges, which the launch team tackled brilliantly by prioritizing the stability of the stream for the majority of viewers. I'm sure many of you have seen the chatter in the press and on social media about the quality issues. We don't want to dismiss the poor experience of some members, and we know we have room for improvement, but still consider this event a huge success. So yeah, I think it's a huge success and it's a good company. They'll fix it.
Yep.
All right, that was a good one. Let's move on to the next story here. Related to Elon Musk, our favorite person to talk about, related to the elections, which have been very insightful, controversial, and eye-opening for the U.S. But during the election, we all, or most of us, know that Elon Musk has been a heavy supporter of Donald Trump, and he has not been keeping that quiet on X. And so during the election week, there was a lot of just rhetoric. There's a lot of chatter, a lot of posts because of all the things going on with the Next and how it's been somewhat being positioned as more of like I guess, a far right or Republican discussion forum nowadays. Maybe Truth Social evolved. So disgruntled X users are flocking to BlueSky, which is a social media platform that was started by Jack Dorsey, who you all know also founded Twitter. BlueSky was an invitation-only platform until it opened to the public in February. But because of all the things that have been going on, people have been recently joining the platform. And so BlueSky said in mid-November that it had its total users surged to 15 million, up from 13 million at the end of October. So about 2 million users joined the platform in a 2-week period. And a lot of this is due to post-election and election disgruntlement. And so, yeah, so that was interesting news. And and we were talking about it before we started the podcast of how I was sitting there over the weekend having dinner with some people, and someone just mentioned BlueSky and how they joined BlueSky. And I actually hadn't really been following or heard of BlueSky until the weekend. But because of this person who was, a tech person, but maybe not so like up in the news, I thought it was interesting. So, what are
Yeah,
your
I was
thoughts?
surprised you didn't. I was surprised you didn't know about BlueSky. But anyways, yeah. So BlueSky is kind of like again Dorsey's. So right, Dorsey kind of left whatever when Elon bought Twitter, but BlueSky was his second attempt to build the Twitter that he envisioned, kind of like a decentralized, no censorship type. I'm hesitant to call it social, but that's what everybody's going to call it. But basically, how he fixed some of the mistakes he thought he made with Twitter with BlueSky. But ironically, Dorsey has also left BlueSky because they changed to wanting to be the social media site to compete with Twitter, which is very interesting. But yeah, so I mean, it is what it is. It's like a Twitter alternative, if you want to think about it that way, similar to Threads is a Twitter alternative. And so you're starting to see some big names come into this space as kind of like, you know, everybody sees an opportunity there because just a lot of people are not happy with the Twitter owner.
So when celebs say that they're going to move from the US, they actually meant they're going to move from X to BlueSky.
Yeah.
This is their way of moving.
Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. Again, it feels like it's I guess it's almost like the hype cycle, right? It's like something big happened, people say they're gonna leave Twitter, and then, off to just looking for alternatives. And so that's the only time I've seen BlueSky come up with the news. There's also Mastodon was also the first big one before BlueSky kind of came out of their beta. If you haven't heard of Mastodon, that's the open source version of Twitter. It's a little bit different because it's self-hosted, and so it's got this weird decentralized in the truest sense,
Yeah, I'm going to
right?
say decentralized.
So you have like all these independent servers that kind of connect to each other, which is not a great user experience. So I feel like the scaling there it's just it's a little bit more challenging because it's actually kind of confusing even for me when I'm looking into it. But yeah,
So you're saying that Jack Dorsey started BlueSky, but then left BlueSky?
yeah, he's not part of it anymore. It was like a few months ago, I feel like I saw news where Dorsey said, yeah, there are disagreements in direction. And so he's kind of like stepped back.
But he wasn't the CEO. It's weird that the CEO and founder, and if he was CEO,
Board. So he was part of the board.
got it. He wasn't
So
he wasn't really active. He founded it, got other people to run it and build it, but he was on the board.
formed by Dorsey in 2019, BlueSky began as an internal Twitter team tasked with developing an open source infrastructure on which the entire platform could shift to.
Yeah.
By 2022, the goal had changed and BlueSky was spun off as an independent team. And then
Yeah.
Dorsey was essentially an active user after Musk acquired Twitter. Okay. Joined BlueSky.
Yeah, from what
So,
I'm
yeah,
reading, it sounds like this was started in 2019 and it was meant to be more of a decentralized social media like Mastodon.
Yeah.
And it was essentially it was a spin-off.
Yeah. So, I mean, was it founded? I guess if it was an internal team at Twitter and spun off, it had to be spun off by Dorsey, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well,
there is.
I mean, the other larger story related, why we're bringing this up is also just what's going on X, right? I mean, when Elon Musk wanted to buy Twitter, he wanted to buy Twitter because he wanted to have a platform of free speech. And for the most part, he's been shifting X to that platform. But it also just comes down to, the loudest mouth in the room is going to set the tone and take over, for what the culture is of this free speech forum.
It's Elon himself, right?
Elon
It's like,
himself bringing,
yeah,
unlocking and bringing Donald Trump back to the platform. And then you have all these other, MAGA supporting people who are just
yeah,
talking. So
yeah.
for me, it's like, yeah, it's become kind of a cesspool of stuff. And I follow Elon on X. I kind of I have his tweets on alerts because what things that he say affect Twitter. Oh yeah, affect Tesla stock.
Tesla, yeah,
But the last month and a half here, I've just been ignoring them because it's only
yeah,
Donald
yeah,
Trump this, Donald Trump that.
yeah,
Like Democrats suck this, Democrats suck that.
yeah.
So
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the way he's positioned it as the like public town hall, but it's like, can you really have a public town hall when the king is sitting in the middle of the hall, right, sitting in the middle of it
yeah,
and
that's a good
listening to what
analogy.
everybody. So also, I think what's led to some of the exodus this past couple of weeks is, I believe there was a cutoff date recently where Grok would soon be just trained on Twitter
Oh, that's
posts.
right. The terms, right?
Yeah, and so that's why you've also seen a lot of people start to delete their accounts or close their accounts. The most prominent one this week I saw was The Guardian said they were no longer going to be active on Twitter and are moving to Threads. Is it Threads? And I think part of this, it's the undercurrent of, not only whatever the controversies of X itself, but, companies not wanting to support X in that way. It probably didn't help when, remember a couple of months back when Elon just basically said, F you, advertisers. I'm going to sue you to force you to advertise on X, which is the most ridiculous thing. But anyways.
Yeah.
BlueSky.
This is a cascading effect. And I think we'll see if Elon does not fix things, which I don't think he actually will.
I don't think he cares anymore at
Exactly.
this point, right? Because
it's just
he's basically made up whatever he's lost on his Twitter, right? So now he's made more than enough, right, by supporting Trump to basically treat Twitter however he wants now.
And he's in cahoots with Trump. And so it's just going to be Truth Social, basically.
And that's why you see DJT or Trump's social media company, tank, right? It's because of that. It's like, why does he doesn't need it anymore. So,
but Elon's longer term play, though, one of the core foundational reasons he bought Twitter is he wants to make a super app. So just, like the Wii app in Asia. But that's always what he wanted to do. So we'll see where that goes.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Well, I'm going to check out BlueSky. I'm not active on Threads, but maybe this is the push over to Threads or some other social network.
I've tried using Threads, but maybe it's just who I'm following, but it's almost like the visual version of Instagram. It feels like people are only using it as a secondary to Instagram, meaning they're still posting photos and stuff.
Yeah.
It's not really a conversation. But I mean, we'll see. Meta said they have hundreds of millions of users on Threads at this point. So,
well, it's because they're forced. You're forced the Facebook account.
Yeah, originally. Yeah. But yeah, check out BlueSky. I saw like Mark Cuban is on it definitely. He's been a big proponent, at least on X if you frequent X a lot. But anyways, yeah. So a lot of new people have joined. So it's a little bit less dead.
Okay, let's move on to the last story. Interesting one related to chips and chip stocks. And by the way, NVIDIA's earnings report is Wednesday. So NVIDIA has had a big pullback in this last week because people are wanting to see what happens with earnings. But the US has granted funding to a well-known chip manufacturer, Taiwan Semiconductors. And if you don't know what Taiwan Semiconductors is, you should, because they are a backbone of our chips production globally. They account for something like 65% of the global chip manufacturing market share. As a chip designer, they don't actually make their own chips. They design them, and then Taiwan Semiconductors actually manufactures them. And yes, they are in Taiwan, And so that's something to be aware of. But the United States granted TSM up to $6.6 billion of direct funding to help build several plants on USO. And the investment will help them to build 3 state-of-the-art facilities in Arizona, said President Joe Biden. And this is really just part of the strategy and part of this broader CHIPS Act that was created by the Biden administration to fund and ensure that semiconductor chips can be made at scale, but also to bring more of that to the US. And so this is big news because while Trump is critical of Biden's CHIPS Act, Trump does want to bring more jobs to the US, right? Like his whole platform around tariffs is that he wants to tariff imports by as much as 2x. And he wants to tariff China the most. And the reason why we want to do that is because if we say that imports are going to get taxed higher, then these companies can hopefully bring more manufacturing to the US. Because if they're built on the US soil, then they won't get taxed. So we'll see if Trump actually pulls this one back, but there's thoughts that he may once he gets into the presidency. But at the same time, it does create more US jobs and circumvents this issue of high tariffs from China. I will say, I do need to make sure that I say that Taiwan is not part of China, because I was kind of rolling that into imports. I actually don't know what the tariff plan is for Taiwan specifically.
This is the kind of like question mark that's going through everybody's mind, right? Is what happens when the new administration takes over. If Elon still has the ear of the king, he'll be able to convince him not to do anything major against at least Taiwan, because Tesla is also reliant on these chips that NVIDIA makes at the moment. And so, who knows? But again, Elon has vested interest in making sure to appease China too, right? Because that's a significant portion of Tesla's revenue. And so that's where I'm also interested to see how hard Trump actually hits China, right? Because of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a mess. It's like, yeah. This is what happens when you have business people control a country, and when they don't divest their interests, is because then all their policies are built to help them make it more rich. It's the oligarchy.
And yeah, and think about all the nominations for cabinet, right?
It can't be real. This can't be real life. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into politics, but it's like,
well, I was reading this article, and when Trump was questioned around some CHIPS Act information, he said that instead of moving forward with the CHIPS Act, he would rather put tariffs on chips coming out of Taiwan, but didn't say how much in tariffs. So
if people don't understand what that actually means, like literally, well, every electronic device has some form of chip in it, right? So we're not just talking about like a computer, like even small chips that don't do anything, right? It'd be a catastrophe, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think we talked about it in the last or the episode before, but tariffs are going to impact us. Things are going to be more expensive. It's going to increase inflation probably. And yeah.
We'll see. I mean, the economy, this is the weird thing. The economy might be strong enough for it to feel like nobody really feels it until 2-3 years down the road, right? And so that's the other thing. It's not instantaneous, which I feel like a lot of people talk about it that way, right? It takes a while for things to kind of like work through the supply chain. But anyways, well, again, it's a huge experiment is what I feel like. It's a huge modern day like experiment for a country to see how fast a country can either fall or potentially grow. So we'll see.
As we said in the last episode, we'll probably feel it, but the 1% won't feel it.
No, it won't. But when you have $100 billion, right, it is a drop in a bucket.
Yeah.
You literally can't spend enough, fast enough.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for TSM to have, plants here in the US. Like if we can bring some of that market share here, that's good for the US, but also it just creates more jobs. And we know that chip manufacturing and the chip landscape is this new wave of necessity that's going to power the next generation of technology.
Yeah, I agree. We should have some capability to manufacture like key pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Well, that was it for episode 38. Nice short stories. This and Tony is slowly getting his new office set up.
Changing up my background a bit.
Yeah. So maybe next week we'll see you with a little more of your hardware and more decorations. Yeah.
I'm kind of liking this headphone though. I feel like it's easy. I don't have to worry about random noises everywhere. Anyways, doesn't feel like I'm in it.
Yeah.
Like it feels like I'm on a work call.
All right. Well, we will see you all next week.
All right. See ya.